What'd you think of the angle? Is it too soap opera-y for ECW in '96?
You can never be too soap opera-y. That's what wrestling is. Wrestling is a soap opera. It just happens to take place in a ring, not General Hospital or in the days of our lives. But the pregnancy angle is bad in the sense that there's no payoff. You know, and that's why I don't like it, because there's no I hate ripping the fans off with a shitty payoff. Although Mae Young getting pregnant and having a hand, I love that because it's so fucking stupid. It was so random and ludicrous. And come on, she's 80-something years old. She's not getting pregnant. So going to Beulah, I never liked the fact that she was going to be pregnant.
But was it always the plan not to have that payoff, or was there like a whole thing where she was going to go off camera, have the baby?
I really think that was one of the few times Paulie just had no payoff, but he was going to figure it out when he got there. And, you know, I mean, that's almost, you have to go with the abortion, you know, or, you know, but there's nothing wrong with that. You know, she gets an abortion, it's controversial, you know, or she gets beat up and, you know, she gets accidentally super kicked and loses the kid. You know, I mean, that's the only way. I know, but it's the only way.
Did you have Paulie's ear at the time? Would you be able to make a suggestion like that?
I always had Paulie's ear. That was why we worked so well together, because, see, all bookers see themselves through certain characters. Like Vince sees himself as the $1 Million Man and Lex Luger the Patriot. That's who he sees himself as. You know, and the bodybuilder type and the Patriot of Lex, and the $1 Million Man who can be a prick of DiBiase. Paulie saw the world through Raven's eyes. So, and that's why we had such simpatico, such a beautiful working relationship. What damaged it was my inability to not be childish all the time, in the sense that aggravating, annoying, you know, and so I wasn't the most professional person there is, and I'm more than willing. You know, I was an asshole, but you know,
in not wanting to do things.
No, it had nothing about business. It had never had anything to do with business. It was all. I'm glad you clarified that. Nothing in business. It was all in the personal scheme of things. So, but I always had his ear for business, no matter what. But what drove us apart, as you know, when I moved on to WCW, was me leaving. But I think why he took it so badly, or why he was so angry about it, was also because personally, I really got on his nerves. But business-wise, no, he always had time for me. You know, and I think that's part of the problem was, you know, he'd think it was business and half business, and then I'd go off on some drunken riff, you know, and drive him nuts like, you know, me and the Sandman would, you know, because we were idiots.
Was Tommy together with Beulah behind the scenes yet?
I couldn't remember. Probably. I mean, you know, I don't remember.
Did it mirror any kind of real-life love triangle behind the scenes, or was...
No. I mean, this is how Beulah got into business. I was in Miami for the Super Bowl. I don't know which one. 29. What year is this now? What Super Bowl are we at now? I don't know.
That's a good question.
49. We're 49. Yeah, so that's about right. 20 years ago. So so I was at Super Bowl 29, and we had tickets. And then we went to a party afterwards, and I ran into my buddy Ron Gant. I'm just dropping names here left and right.
That's a good one.
So I ran into Ron Gant, who played for the Braves. I knew him from being out and stuff. And he was with this girl, Teresa. And he's like, oh, that's my buddy Raven. He's a pro wrestler. She's like, oh, I want to get back into wrestling. I'm like, what do you mean? I go, what do you mean back into wrestling? She goes, I used to wrestle. I used to be in the business with Pillman as Pillman's sister in Calgary. So that's how she got into business, because Pillman was dating her, and then they brought her in as a sister for a little bit, and then that fizzled out. And then, so I go, well, send me some pictures, you know. And I didn't think at all that she would fit Raven's character at the time, and I was totally wrong about that. So she sent me some pictures when she did Penthouse and stuff. So I was like, hey, Paulie, check this out. You know, she wants to get back into business. And he's like, she'll be perfect for you. I'm like, well, not me. I don't need a valet. I mean...
She sent you the Penthouse pictures?
Yeah. Yeah, well, what else are you gonna?
If you ask me to send, you're gonna get me in the business. Send me pictures. I'd send you me and maybe in my what I'm gonna wrestle in.
Yeah, well, I mean, but she never wrestled though. She was just a valet. You know,
Yeah.
she played his sister. You know what I mean? Well, if you're gonna get, if you want to get in the
Very
business,
smart though. Very
yeah,
smart.
she's
Very
smart. She's a very smart girl.
Go ahead.
So she what a.
So you showed them to Paulie.
Yeah, I showed him to Paulie. Paulie says, she'll be perfect for you. I'm like, I'm thinking, I don't need it because I got all my other idiots. You know what I mean? And he's like, no, she's perfect for you. And he was right. Actually, I only had the one idiot at the time, Stevie. And so I thought that she would be detract from me and him, you know, our ludicrous relationship. And so, but he's like, no, she'd be perfect. And then once we worked out how she was going to fit in, and I came up with that. See, when I came in, Paulie thought I was going to be like a comedy-based grunge character or alternative character or, you know, tattooed or whatever, but like a comedy version because I'd always been a comedy-ish character. But I wanted to be the person that was inside, with all the childhood baggage and stuff. You know, the person, you know, like Paulie says in interviews, he goes, Raven, I think he said something like, Raven's one of the best actors I know because he's so different from his character, you know, so to be able to portray it. But I'm not on the inside, just on the outside. You know, it's the wall I put up is a jovial, you know, idiot. But inside, you know, I got that tortured, you know, insecure childhood that I'm still living, you know, well, I've mostly dealt with through therapy. But so I suggested to Paulie, I said, so when I come in, I want to be like, so he's expecting me to be this comedy character. And I'm like, no. And so when he saw the first interview, he realized there was something completely different. Yeah, so then when he suggested the girl, I said, well, she could be the fat girl from summer camp, or maybe we came up with this together. And that I used to bang, but she was in love with Dreamer, but, you know, I settled for her, you know, because I was always in Dreamer's shadow, you know. And so now, then when Stevie brings her out, I'm thinking he's bringing out this fat girl from my youth, you know, from me and Tommy's youth, and it turns out she's this hot penthouse model. And, you know, and I remember specifically, I gave Stevie the backhand when he said he's bringing her out, because, like, if you slap somebody, it's dismissive, but if you backhand them, it's so much more dismissive. But unfortunately, it hurts, and Stevie used to hate the backhand. He's like, oh, don't give me the backhand, boss. But he was a trooper, man. He took everything.
Yeah.
But he had to. But that's who the character was, and that's why he got over as a babyface, because he was so good at being a ludicrous idiot.
How did he fit in the locker room when he first came in?
Good, as far as I know. I mean, you know, he was a pothead, you know. He was, you know, basically anybody who passed the drug test was fired in ECW.
Rob was just on this show and said that very joke. We had a drug policy. If you passed, you couldn't work.
Yeah.
But he also indicated that there was a bit of he saw himself very much as a second wave coming in. Where
I can see
some
that.
of those first guys were dying off. Maybe the Shane Douglas era was over and all
Yeah,
that.
oh yeah, I totally see that. But yeah, but I was never a part of of any clique. You know, I mean, you know, it's like the New York clique was. Well, let me rephrase that. The New York clique was Sandman. I mean, I'm sorry. The Philly clique was Sandman, Todd Gordon, and the Pitbulls, and then I was basically affiliated with them because that's where I was living. The New York clique was the Dudleys, Taz, and Paulie.
Okay, and you didn't put yourself in that?
No, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be in there.
But within that group, as someone who was very close to Paul.
Yeah, but I was only close to Paul business-wise. I wasn't. That's why I was saying before. I wasn't close to him personally. We've never been close personally. We've always been close business. If I remember, and I can't say I remember much of anything those years. Those were the lost years. Those are officially known as the lost years. or the beginning of the lost year. The lost years actually were WCW-ish, but no, I don't think Shane ever watered down his comments. He always, he hated Dick Flair and he hated New York. Those were, and I think he added Scott Hall and Nash to his litany of people he hated. But, I respect the hell out of Shane because he always had the balls to say what he meant, and he meant what he said, and he would say it, and he had no problem burning a bridge, And, as somebody who's burned probably more bridges than anybody, I respect the hell out of that. It's such an interesting combination. I almost was a Public Enemy. There was a thought, I think at one point, possibly of that, but not on my. I wanted to do a rapper gimmick way back when I was Scotty Flamingo, and I tried to get back as that, and Dusty hired PN News. But I would have thought that like a Vanilla Ice guy, because Vanilla Ice was so in at the time, and at the time I was listening to a lot of rap, and I think my interest in rap completely fell apart once it turned into gangster rap, or not once it did, but after gangster rap, whatever became after that, I lost interest. Maybe that's just called age, but I remember I saw them in Philadelphia at a hotel, and we had before I was in ECW, I think, or I'm not sure, and we talked about it, and they're like, yeah, that'd be, you'd be good for us, for our group, but I don't think it was ever anything serious, you know what I mean? So I don't think there was ever anything serious about it, but I think there was once a thought of it, that I'd fit in with them, but it's not what I wanted to do, and I'm pretty sure that's not what they wanted, but I think the thought gestated once.
They leave to go to WCW, and they're treated to the full, you sold out, you'll be back, that whole thing. What were your locker room views on WCW? Are they the enemy still, or?
I never bought the Kool-Aid because I was the only person in the company full time who'd actually been places and worked territories. I'd already been in the business, a half a dozen years at that point, but full time 6 years, so that's like, I probably had 1,800 matches by then. Most guys, now guys go a career without getting 1,800 matches. So I worked Memphis, then I worked Florida Championship Wrestling, then I worked for Vancouver for Al Tomco, British Columbia or whatever. Then I went to Portland for 2 years. Then I worked for Global. Then I worked for WCW. Then I went to WWF, and I became a producer, co-producer, or associate producer Monday Night Raw, and I had an office in Titan Tower on the 4th floor, across from Pat and Bruce, and I walked away from that. And so I'd been around the block, so I knew better than to, but I understood what Paulie was doing because in wrestling, it's all, and I agree with what he was doing. In wrestling, it's always about the individual. And to me, it's not. It's a team sport because you're really all out there trying to draw money together. And whoever your opponent is, you're out there having a dance with them or, to make it look like a fight, but you're working together. So I always looked at it as a team sport, but most people don't. And Paulie tried to build it like a team sport. And that's what I loved about it so much is, he made us all feel like a team. I never bought that they're the rivals like everybody else did because I knew better. But I also felt that he was right in doing it because it builds that inner pride. You know what I mean?
And he's working a little bit when he does that.
Oh, of course.
He's playing the coach.
Well, he always saw himself as Vince Lombardi. So, and that's honestly, we've talked about it, and he saw himself as Vince Lombardi, and he felt he was able to motivate and he was. Nobody could make you want to walk into a brick wall faster. He could get you so motivated. You could hate his, and I'm sure everybody's told you this. You could be so mad at him, you want to kill him, and then 5 minutes later, you want to walk off a cliff.
I say all the time to you guys that every show has stories of Paul fucking someone out of money, lying about when you're going to get a check, you can't feed your family, and everyone tells the story with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
He's
But he
the,
never
he's the
did those things to
deceptive
me.
teddy bear to everyone.
It's not that. It's that.
Why is he so lovable?
It's not that. It's that. First of all, he's a charming guy. You know, he's just a charming, funny, witty guy. So there's that. There's also the fact that he brought out in everybody more than they ever would have got out of themselves on their own.
How?
Because he knew how to coach. That's what coaching's all about.
What did he do to you that brought out more than anybody else would have brought out? Having worked everywhere in the...
He allowed me to be who I wanted to be, to do what I wanted to do in the way I wanted to do it. That's all he needed to do with me. Because I was one of the few guys, I think, that never wanted to stop learning, never wanted to stop growing. Until I got 15, 20 years in the business, you know what I mean? But, I never understood why guys got 5 years in the business or 3 years in the business and they stopped learning. I mean, I never understood that. But Paulie was able to get them to re-motivate themselves, to get them to play harder, to play better, to play faster. I'll give you an example of how he was able to motivate me was in another instance. I always wanted to be in a barbed wire match where they take the ropes down and put a barbed wire instead. But I was also a little, intimidated by that. I was like, So I'm like, and so when he was going to put the belt back on me, and he goes, but the only way I'm putting it back on you is if we do it in a barbed wire cage match, in a barbed wire ring match. Which knowing it's not about the belt, but it's like, that's like the little carrot extra
Sure.
that he dangles. I would have done it anyway, but if it wasn't if it wasn't put in a position where it meant something, or if it wasn't the culmination of a feud or the culmination of something, then there'd be no point in it just to do it, and I would have a problem with that,
Right.
So just to do a barbed wire ring match, I take, why? Especially because I'm a little timid about it, until I did it. And then once I did it, I was fine. But, but overcoming that fear. So he put me in a spot to be courageous. Yeah, I was still feuding with Dreamer. So probably, he probably just told me the night I got there. Because if I was feuding with Dreamer and I hadn't started my feud with Sandman, then I probably wasn't, and it's probably one of those things that, let's face it, everybody wants to win the world title. Everybody wants to be the best, but you also have to take it with a grain of salt. You're not really winning a world title. You're not beating anybody, so it's really, so it's like something you're proud of, but you're not, because you didn't really beat. You know what I'm saying?
There is some pride to be had in it
Right.
because someone's making a decision to put
Right.
what is supposed to be the most important thing on you.
That
so
is
it's a vote
what-
of confidence.
That's what it is. It's the pride that he says, I think you're the guy that can carry my company. That's what the prize is, or it's supposed to be.
Now the guy losing it.
What's that?
Now the guy losing it, could you also say, is subtly being told you're no longer the guy?
Not necessarily, and this is something really fascinating that I learned the very next week. So to me, it meant the culmination of somebody finally believing in me 100%, that they're willing to put, like when I was in Portland, I was the heavyweight champion, and so on a regional level, which then again, ECW was still regional, but it wasn't. It was, but it wasn't. But Portland, I'd been in that same position. I'd carried the company, in Portland for a year or two, or whatever I did, for however long I was there. But so this was on a bigger stage, and then, oddly enough, after being in WCW again and in WWF or WWE, like for years, until I went through therapy with a shrink or a psychologist, it bothered me that I was my career was a failure because I felt like I was a failure because I was never the world champion of a major, like I was the world champion of the number 3 company, but I was never the best of the best. And which is stupid because if anybody else came to me and said that same thing, I would say, you had a great career, don't be an idiot. But I held myself to a higher standard. And even though there's political reasons, and let's face it, maybe I was never that good. Maybe I didn't deserve to be that. But in my mind, I felt like I was. And I held myself to such a high standard. So I had to see a therapist to finally let myself off the hook and not hold myself to such a high standard. But yet while still holding myself to a standard very, very high, just not an impossible standard.
But in ECW at the time,
right,
it must have been.
Yeah,
you weren't considering that as the number 3 company getting the title.
I did. I always did. See,
even when you were there.
That's the thing. I always did because I'd been everywhere else. See, I never. To me, ECW has always been the number 3 company. But all the guys that worked there, it wasn't because, you know, like to them that was the be all end all. But to me, it was always like, yeah, but that's not, you know, it's like being the king of the Shrine Circus, but not the king of the Ringling Brothers. You know what I mean? And so I never saw it that way, and I still kind of don't, even though I know it was a better show. Although, let's face it, when WCW and WWE stole a lot of the concepts that made ECW so good, their shows became incredible to watch as well. So I can't even say it was the greatest show I'd ever seen in wrestling. The first great show I'd ever saw was Bill Watts' UWF. Well, okay, go back further. Growing up in Florida, Florida Championship Wrestling was tremendous. But then I saw Bill Watts' UWF, and that was unbelievable. Then I went to Portland, and Portland was really good. But then ECW, the show was so good. That's why I had to be on the company, and wanted to be there while I was waiting for Cornette to bring me in, because the show was unbelievable. But I've always looked at it as number 3 because it was number 3. I mean, we're not pulling any punch. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage it. I think it was the most influential, you know. They're like REM before REM had Losing My Religion. Here's the thing, is now it doesn't bother me, okay? But I'm still saying, ECW, for those 2 years I was there, and I was lucky. I caught lightning in a bottle. I caught the zeitgeist. I caught the wave as it was cresting, and then I got out when the wave, and it got bigger after I left, but it wasn't as influential.
Right.
And I was there for the 2 biggest years, and I feel like I was one of the singularly major focuses of the TV show for those 2 years. And I am so proud to be a part of it, and I wouldn't change it for anything. That being said, there's a part of me that wishes I would have, that WCW at its peak, they were monstrous, and Raw at its peak was monstrous. So, you know, but look, let's, you know,
if you had to be somewhere in its peak, you're comparing it to
honestly,
having been in WWE.
I'm put it this way, I wouldn't want to have been anywhere else for, like, I'd rather be at ECW at its peak, but if I am putting it in a historical context, they were still a number 3 company, even though their influence made them so much. You know, it's like being a rebounder. They were Dennis Rodman. You know what I mean? In more ways than one. You know, the rebounder gets none of the glory, but you know, it's the shooter, the guy who makes all the shots, who gets all the glory. But you know, or whoever is the flashiest. You know, well, no, it's the scorer. It's always the scorer. But the rebounder is who's doing the work underneath. And Rodman's I just thought of that analogy, by the way, but Rodman's such a great analogy because he's also so strangely weird and out there and influential in his style and
able to maintain the element of cool when people look back at the legacy.
Of course.
You might have lost that in WWE. You might have held the title, but you might have been running around Scotty Flamingo.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying.
You could have saved so much money on therapy by just coming to us a lot sooner.
No, but it took, you know what it was though? It took the therapy to allow me to let myself off the hook. You know, I think I have a fabulous career. You know, I'm very happy and very proud and very grateful for it. But what I'm saying is it's a shame ECW was never able to be the biggest, because if it would have been, if Paulie would have had the money to make it the biggest, it would have been unbelievable. But let me go back to your other thing real quick. Winning the belt, Sandman. So the next week on the show's all about Sandman. And I go, Paulie, I just won the belt. I go, why is it the show about me? He goes, because you won the belt. Now the show's about Sandman, and we rebuild him because he lost the belt. I'm like, wow. That is so obvious now that you've said it, and it's so fucking brilliant. Yet and that's why he was so good. And that's what I try to do when I've always tried to do that. Think, it's not even outside the box thinking, it's thinking things through thoroughly and realizing that the path that everybody takes isn't always the smart path.
Speaking to your legacy as champion, you get to do cool things like work with Kimona Wanalea. From where
I brought her in.
Where does she surface? Good, let's take that. Go ahead.
Okay, I needed a new valet, and on Monday nights there was no clubs to go to. Like I go out every night of the week. I'd been going out every night of the week from the time I was like 15. So, it was nothing new. But although the excessive drug and alcohol intake, got much, much worse. As a sidebar, Raven, it was art imitating life. That's how I created Raven. But soon life started to imitate art because I started to become more and more Ravenish and more alcoholic and more drugged out and more what he was. So it was originally art imitating life, but then it started to become life imitating art, and that's when things got bad. But and that's why hence the lost years. But
trying to see how she ties into this.
So I'd go out every night. So I lived in Philadelphia. I'd go out every night of the week. There's always a club to go to. Monday nights, nowhere to go to. And across from where I was living was a strip club called whatever, I can't remember, but it's on the tip of my tongue. I'll blurt it out later. And so she was a dancer, and my buddy's girlfriend, and my buddy the DJ, and my other buddy who's a DJ, he's the one who got me the job, I think, or I met him, or maybe I met him there because I would just DJ. I started DJing Monday nights, so to speak, because there was nowhere to go, and I figure if I'm going to be out drinking and there's nowhere to go, I might as well get paid to do it, So I was DJing a titty bar, and it was across the street, so it was an easy drive home, And so I needed a new valet, and his girlfriend was hot, and she was Oriental, and I thought she had a cool look. And so I said, you want to get her into business, and he wanted to be in the business bad. He eventually started training and stuff, so that's basically where I found her, it's interesting about her because she had a magnetic personality on camera. She couldn't talk, she couldn't wrestle, didn't do much anything, but there's something about her,
Were you romantically linked with her at any point?
No.
There's the answer. That's the answer, then.
No.
You got to think about it.
No, I was thinking about all the other ones I was romantically linked with. I was basically romantically linked with almost every valet I've had, except for her.
Cool. Oh, first of all, who comes up with the name? Come on,
I did. Well, see, and this is irritating too. I came up with Beulah McGillicuddy. At least I know I came up with part of it. I forget which, or at least, and Paulie and Tommy and I always fight over this. But I know I came up with Kimona Wanalea because when you're a kid, there's these little jokes like Under the Bleachers by Seymour Butts. The Hole in the Mattress by Mr. Completely.
Right.
And there was The Hawaiian Prostitute by Kimona Wanalea. And that's how I came up with it. And yet they still claim that they came up with it having just out of whole cloth, which I'm like, no, you didn't, but whatever, They probably do it just to get my goat. And I don't even have a goat. Okay, he's in a weird position, okay? They give him the superhero gimmick, 911 is one of the greatest gimmicks ever. The name, it's just the name, his look, even though he had a mullet, it didn't matter, it just worked on him for some reason. because it just some people can pull off mullet off. You know what I mean? Even post mullet years. And the leather jacket he had, you know, which you have to be the right guy to pull the ones off with the tassels.
Tassels.
Yeah, but it's a cool jacket. You have to be the right guy. You know, he was the right guy with the right look, and he couldn't work, but he wanted to work, but he couldn't, and Paulie would never let him work because, you know, it would expose him. And so, and the greatest gimmick, the people would chant 911, like Santa Claus comes out. Only in Philadelphia does Santa Claus come out and the people start chanting 911. And the music, oh my God, Edgar Winter's Frankenstein. Da 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 da. So I mean, he was built for this spot. I mean, and it was the greatest spot. And so then he wanted to wrestle, and Paulie would never let him. And then finally he let him with Ron Simmons, and it was a disaster.
Did he feel he could work?
I think so. I think, you know, let's face it, how does it not go to your head when the people just go ass crazy cheering your name? You know, you don't do anything except come out and chokeslam a guy. You know, he was crucial to one of the biggest key moments in one of my feuds. It was the Pitbulls, Stevie and Raven Pitbull's double dog collars match. We have the double dog collar match where it looks like I break my neck when Pitbull number 2 super bombs me into the edge of the table because he didn't want me kicking out of his super bomb through a table. And I'm like, well, you just made me in a Superman when I kick out of fucking almost dying, you know? And and then what happens is that I chloroformed Pitbull number 2, and everyone's like, oh, no one's gonna buy that. I'm like, they'll buy it because at the time, like, I didn't know you couldn't buy chloroform, but I mean, not chloroform, but
ether.
Ether, that's it. Yeah, I didn't know you couldn't get ether anywhere, but I found out, except from the Ether Bunny, but I found out that bowling ball cleaner used to have ether in it, and at that time it did. They don't do it anymore. But so it had a little bit of ether in it. And I'm like, man, this is going to go. Everyone's like, no one's going to buy it. I go, they'll buy it when they smell it. But I didn't tell anybody that part because I just wanted to watch the boys because I loved getting over shit that the boys, like the Blue Meanie, people thought, that's the stupidest idea I ever heard. It's awesome. But so I fucking put the fucking ether into the snot rag. I fucking gas him with it. I knock him out. Hey, he's half knocked out because it's a shoot. There's enough ether in there. And I got him gassed by it. And he's half knocked out. They carry him off. Dreamer comes in to be the replacement partner for Pitbull 1. They win the tag titles. I think Dreamer pins me or something. But then out comes Fonzie, the heel referee. Yep. It doesn't count. It doesn't count, Daddy. And which was such a beautiful thing. And Fonzie had been his heel ref for 6 months at least now, with always getting his way. Nobody ever did anything to him. And so much heat. I mean, and the way Fonzie would talk, you know, it is, hey, Daddy, you know, it's just, and it's blowing the whistle. You wanted to kill him. And then so he, but then out comes Big Dick Dudley to help me. And the Dudleys come out, and they get Dreamer and the Pitbulls fight him off. We get double super bombed. I got Stevie up on my shoulders. And which I came up with, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. I'm fucking, you know, it's pretty scary.
Right.
Stevie goes, no, I'll do it. I'm like, fuck, now I got to do it. Why'd I come up with that? So we're up there. They don't put Stevie's leg in right, so I have to save his life, or save his leg. Pull his leg in so it's tucked in under like that. We get double super bombed. Dreamer covers us, I think. I think I got this sequence right. Then out comes the Dudleys to make the save. They fight him off, but there's Big Dick, and he grabs the fucking Dreamer by the throat. Fonzie blows the whistle, and he goes, because choke slams are banned. That's right. He banned the choke slam, so 911 couldn't choke slam anybody. Fonzie goes, the choke slams are back on, Daddy. Dreamer gets choke slammed. Da 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 da. Here comes 911. Plants Fonzie, almost kills himself because he tried to put his legs back to. Like, instead of just going up and keeping his body, you know, like that, and he's like reaching back, like, you know, because people, when you don't bump, your tendency is to turn back, you know, and to reach and try and protect yourself. All you're doing is not protecting yourself.
Right.
So he almost gets killed. But so 911's in crucial things like that, as well as, you know, some guy goes to play the national anthem, misses a note, 911, you know. And the best part is you didn't have to prompt the fans. They knew when it was not, like when Fonzie goes, the choke slams Lee going, as soon as Big Dick Dudley choke slams Tommy, 911. You know, so it had to go to his head. You know what I mean? It's just, he's a hometown guy, you know, on the hottest show. And in his mind, this show, you know, and this is why the difference I was saying before, to me, they were still number 3, but to anybody who started there, they were equal. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Or anybody who hadn't started yet, they were equal, but because I had a different perspective. So to him, he's on this hot show. It might as well be worldwide for him. You know, he's a local kid, you know, got his big break, you know, and so he wants more action, you know what I mean? And now he's doing a job. Wait, what do you mean I'm doing it? I've never done a job. I don't even do matches. You won't even let me wrestle, but now you want me to do a job? And that's what went through his head. Okay. And I can understand that real quick. And I know we have a lot of stuff to cover. I know, but because my first brush with ego, and my only brush with ego, was I was working for Florida Championship Wrestling. It was my second territory, and I never did a job. They'd always have me get out of the ring, ring the bell, and walk off. You know, like the match ended. You know what I mean? Kind of silly, but and then Steve Kern, who's the booker and the owner of the company, goes, "Hey, listen, do you mind putting me over today?" And it's, by "do you mind" means you're always asked, you know, "Do you mind?" But it's the answer is yes. You know, there is no is not an answer. It's not like "Do you mind?" and you're supposed to say,
especially when it's the owner of the company.
Right. But I paused for a second. I go, "Well, don't I usually just get counted out?" He goes, "Don't worry about it. You don't have to do it." And I'm like, "No, I don't mind doing it." But right there, that little bit of me going, "But I usually get counted out," that was enough. And then the next day they called me in the office, and Mike Graham goes, "Listen," I go, "Don't tell me you got to fire me." He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Look, I'd fire me too. How can you have insubordination like that?" You know, and that's what also led to me going to Vancouver, which led me to go to Portland. So it all worked out. But the thing is that little hesitation, the fucked up thing is Florida Championship Wrestling was in like 10 markets at that point, because they weren't like when they were a powerhouse in the state. They weren't even airing in my hometown. So like, why would I even care? But it's that little bit of ego that everybody has. And I'm so glad that mine got knocked out, you know, within a year in the business, and I never had it since, you know. I mean, you know, you occasionally be like, you know, but I'm saying, but that's different than being like, I don't want to do, you know, like, why should I have to do this? You know what I mean? And I totally empathize with 911, because I can see in his mind, I'm over. In his mind, he's probably the most over guy in the company. You know, he's not, because he doesn't understand that it's, you know, Fonzie was over, but it was Richie Cunningham that drew the house. You know what I mean? Once Richie Cunningham was off the show, the ratings went down, because he was the emotional soul. Right. You know, Kramer's great, but only in small doses. That's what 911 was. And so he didn't understand that, and you couldn't make him understand that. And so I can totally empathize with how he felt, but it was just ridiculous.
How was he as a fit in the locker room?
Jericho's a great guy. Jericho would get along anywhere with anybody. I mean, he is just genuinely a funny, good-natured, great guy, you know. And if you think about it, nobody has done more outside of wrestling other than The Rock. I mean, he's he's had a couple TV shows, you know, game shows that he hosted. I mean, he's had a phenomenal career. For a guy that was 5'10", 5'11", that was too short, you know what I mean? One of the, you know, borderline vanilla midget, you know what I mean? He did amazing.
How does Paulie get him to come over?
I don't know. All I can think, here's the thing. Anybody can be gotten by cash, you know, but I'm sure that Bigelow finished up with New York for some reason. Although why, I have no idea, because let's face it, if you can take a guy like LT, who's never had a match, and make him look like a 4-star match, you know, that's a achievement. You know what I mean?
And a guy with an achievement like that, does he immediately come into ECW, and is he kind of like a locker room leader? You guys have a lot of more respect.
I don't think he ever wanted to be. I think he was always a guy who I think he probably burnt some bridges. You know, I think he, at least I know he did originally with Vince, didn't he? When he first came in, and then he fucked off to Japan, which I'm not saying that was a bad move, but I'm saying but then he went back, and Vince probably got him back for leaving the first time by having him in, you know, the classic match, the main event, and then letting him go. I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating, you know, just spitballing. But I always got the sense that Bigelow was just happy to be, you know, off to the side by himself. Like when he was in New York, he hung out with, as far as I remember, with the Samoans, you know, who always kept to themselves. I think he did. I'm not positive, you know. You know, even when he was in the Triple Threat, he was always, you know, with Shane Douglas and Candido, like he was always off. Like I remember they wanted to get kiss tattoos with the Triple Threat logo or something, and he's like, I don't want to do that. Like, you know, I think he was just always kind of his own guy. He was fabulous.
Following the success of Mysterio and Psychosis.
Oh, he was last. He was third, huh?
Yeah. Is he, I guess based on their success, he sees it safe to continue the lucha trend?
I think Paulie was just realized, I think Paulie knew that Rey Mysterio was going to be a monster. And he needed somebody, I mean, let's face it, anybody, doesn't matter how little he is, he's just, there's something about him, you know what I mean? And he was so amazing. But let's face it, Hoovy was pretty much almost, I would say Hoovy was just about as good, but the difference was Ray's smarter. Ray's a smarter guy, and Ray is, you know, Hoovy's more in the fucked up mold of Raven, but the only thing that saved Raven was the fact that he was a smarter guy. You know what I mean?
I was going to ask you, does Hoovy behave in ECW or?
Not in WCW.
In ECW.
I don't remember. I think so. You know, the Mexicans always stayed to themselves. But Hoovy was a remarkable fucking athlete. You know, just remarkable. But he didn't have the, not that he's stupid or not, I don't mean that, but he just didn't have the creativity and the cleverness of, or maybe he had the creativity but not the cleverness of Oscar, you know, of Ray. And so I guess they brought in Ray, but they needed somebody to play ball with him who could work with him, so they brought in Psychosis. And then once they had that, they go, well, you know, Hoovy's just as good. Let's get Hoovy in here. The whole thing's a work.
Okay. So
every bit of it. But see, nobody knows that.
You guys don't know that.
No.
When you say everybody, you talking about the talent or?
Well, okay. When Pillman started it, okay, I'm not trying to put myself over, but when Pillman first did it on TV, on WCW, I go, it's a work. And Disco's like, no way, it's a shoot. I'm like, then why don't they cut off the camera? And right away, I mean, to me, the minute they showed him doing anything, like the first with the Booker man and the pencil, I think that was first. But then when they showed him in the audience, total work, you know. But who thinks of that? You know, it's like the wrestling fans gradually get knowledgeable. You know what I mean? You know, when I was a kid, I thought Lex Luger was great in Florida when he was only a rookie because Gordon Solie said he was. You know, so you don't. But if you look through the eyes of somebody who of that knowledge, you know, that's what you know. But the more wrestling you watch and the more you become a fan and the more that's released insider, the more the fans grow in knowledge and so forth. You know, and sometimes and a lot of that has a negative influence, but that's beside the point. But so Pillman, he played it like it was a shoot. I mean, he totally played it like it was a shoot. He was not. He was Andy Kaufmaning it. Andy Kaufmaning it. It
could be a verb today.
Yeah, Kaufman. He was Kaufmaning it. It's because of the Kaufman-inging.
It's the end thing.
Yeah, but he called me. Like me and him were real good friends at the time. Well, not real good, but we were good friends at the time. Because me, him, and Austin used to ride together in WCW as the comedy trio. That was our. And we had a comedy heavyweight champion. We had a comedy league. It was ridiculous, but yeah, entertain yourselves. And so he called me. He said he was coming in, and we did a lot of coke. I remember that when he came in, but. He kept that thing up as a shoot, and I think what happened with him, the same thing happened to me. First, that art was like that. He allowed that life to imitate art. You know, he let the character that he became overrun his life, and his addictions got worse. You know, much worse. I mean, as if as if he didn't party enough before. Now he was mega partying, yeah, he always knew, but he was really smart. He always knew that at his size, he was going to have trouble making the big money, So he had to do something. Yeah, he had to do something.
Do you think it was his intention to stay in ECW, or was he, in his mind, headed to WWF?
No, he always wanted to go to WCW. He always wanted to go back to WCW, really? But get a Luger contract.
What's Todd's role in the company at this point? He's already sold to Paul, right?
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So is it just like an honorarium thing where they keep him around, or?
Todd was the heart and soul to an extent of the place. Like if Paulie was the brains, then he was the then he was the soul. So, I mean, sort of. I mean, that's not a perfect analogy, but yeah, I think that, and plus, he was loved in Philly. He was local guy, owned the pawn shop, which many people don't know, but pawn shops were the original banks. Before there were banks, there were pawn shops, and you took your shit there and you left, and, so and it's not a rinky. It's not like when I used to think of pawn shops, I think of places where you buy used lawnmower or you buy a used gun. But this was all jewelry. He was in Diamond Row in Philly. This is all gold and diamonds he was dealing in. You know what I mean? Big money, and he was an institution in the city, the family company and business, and he was. And so it'd be stupid not to have him. And also, you needed a commissioner. And he was a great babyface commissioner. So I mean, it wasn't like you needed to keep him around, but you'd want to keep him around.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he gets proper credit when we talk about ECW history? I mean, Paulie's mentioned all the time. Should more emphasis have been given to?
Well, what about? Well, that's like saying yes and no. Okay, Joel Goodhart, who supposedly started the whole shindig, and Eddie Gilbert, and then they brought Paulie in, and then Paulie took over. But so I mean, so there's some other names, but. Really, I think Todd gets his credit, because Todd, I think Goodhart was the one who spent all the money to start this whole thing and blew all the money on, on guys, because he wanted to see him wrestle, and then it started a thing. I'm pretty sure that, and then Todd was his commissioner or his booker or something. And then Todd kind of took over when Goodhart, I think he went loony, or I don't know what happened, but yeah. So Todd took over and he kept it going, and then Todd was, I think it was Todd who brought in Paulie, and so I mean, but Todd was he was, yeah. I mean, I think he gets the credit he deserves.
Okay. Deep down, do you guys think he'll make it there? Or do you feel that he's another one of the many who go up north and get misused?
Well, he did. I don't know what we thought at the time, but he did get misused until he got was able to become who he was. You know, an extension of who he was.
Cactus wrote a lot about the different send-offs he received from the New York crowd and the Philly crowds, ECW crowds, in his book. Do you remember the reactions each night? I think Philly...
In Philly, they Fargo strutted out of the place. They got a big babyface pop.
And then in New York, they fucked him with the "You Sold Out," right? That's
I don't know. I don't remember.
From what I remember. Compare and contrast the Philly-New York crowd for me.
Well, all right. Paulie was also smart in that he kind of tried to make it like rival sports teams, you know, even though they were for the same company, so that there would be more motivation of the fans. You know what I mean? Not that they needed motivation, but why not keep them even more motivated? You know, Philly crowd says this, New York crowd says that. And so, you know, whenever you build animosity between things, people, organizations, whatever, it always stirs a little more emotion, and wrestling's an emotion-driven sport. So, you know, a smart idea. But Philly was always the home, you know. It was always Philadelphia because that's where it all started, and it couldn't have started anywhere else. If Goodhart would have started in New York, it wouldn't have happened. If it would have started anywhere else, it wouldn't have happened. It was Philadelphia, it had to be, because Philadelphia is just this, I love Philly, I'm from Philly, and it's just this, I think Howard Stern said it best, Philly's the most fucked up city in the world. It's like New York, they wear their fucked upness on the surface, but in Philly, it's kind of kayfabed a bit. You know, and it's under the behind the scenes, and you know, like they have, you know, what was that guy, Uncle Eddie, who used to buy. They died of AIDS, but he used to buy high school kids' underwear, and they found him when he died with like 6 broom closets filled with boys' shit-stained underwear. You know, I mean, that's the kind of creeps that, you know, that line the underbelly of Philly, but then Philly's also magnificent, the architecture, and you know. And so it's a city of contrasts, but it's just Philly's fans. They're very fickle. You have to give them something special. You know, they want to be. You know, we're not settling for fucking bullshit. You know what I mean? And that's part of what also worked. You know, and if you give them the right thing, they'll sit around the corner at a goddamn bingo hall waiting for it to open up, you know, just to get in. And you're not going to get that any other place, you know. It's the right climate, it's the right place, it's the right everything. Axel was so good, but all anybody ever saw was his hardcore Death Taipei matches, you know, glass on his fingers, stuff like that. But Axel could work. I mean, he could really work, tell a story, psychology. I think what hurt Axel's career the most, well, before the drugs, was he lost the British accent. You know, if for some reason he looked, it took him out of this chubby-ish, baby face, you know, because he had a baby face, but not that he was a baby face, you know, or he could be, I mean, but it took him out of that and made him special. You know, he did it incredibly well. He had everything, and he didn't want to do it. He didn't like doing it, and it was idiotic because it was so unique. You know, he's a punk. You know, he's like a British punk. You know, that's what he dressed like, and that's what he acted like. You know, but without the accent, I mean, you know, it's like Ric Flair without the robes. I don't know. There's something missing. You know. Loved it, you know, and it played off that that Tarantino. Was it
Pulp Fiction?
Not Pulp Fiction. Was it Pulp Fiction? No, it was the other movie. Not Reservoir Dogs. No, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't Tarantino. It was Tarantino-esque. It was
True Romance.
True Romance. Was that Tarantino?
He wrote it.
Yeah, he wrote it. I thought so. Yeah, True Romance, where Dennis Hopper is going to get killed. Like they got him. They're asking him. They're questioning him. And so these hardcore Italians, and he's like, and basically he knows he's going to die, so he's going to insult him the only way he can. So he tells a story, and by insulting him, he was insinuating that, not that I believe this or anybody should, but that, that blacks, that he's part of a black lineage because the Moors conquered Italy or Sicily, and which, so ludicrous. And so that's where Paulie got the idea, I'm sure, to make J.T. Smith, a black guy, be Italian. And J.T. Smith was awesome because there was he was clumsy every so often. Like one time he dove off the top and his foot hooked and he went and crashed and burned, like diving over the top, and his foot just hooked the top rope, so he went straight down. Had a goose egg, it was a softball right here on his head. One time he did something else and he fell off maybe the top rope. So then they just started making up spots for him to
mess up on purpose.
Yeah, just to, like they do a Pulp Fiction montage. He's leaning back in the chair and the chair just falls over. So you need variety on the show. Everybody's not a main eventer, and you need dressing on the card, and that was great dressing.
How does Devon come to be a part of the Dudleys?
Well, we already had, let's see, I actually came up with the Dudleys one day, and we were in Tampa at the fairgrounds, and it just dawned on me. I'm like, "Hey, coach, what are you doing?" I thought of the guy, the Hanson brothers from Slapshot. Just popped in my head. I'm like, "Hey, coach, what are you doing?" Putting on the tape every game, when they were putting on it just didn't make any sense, or I forget what it was, something like that. And and I thought, man, that'd be great. We have some flunkies, that look like the Hanson brothers, a bunch of hick idiots, you know what I mean? So Taz came up with the outfits because he's like, all right, he decided at some point he was chief outfitter and t-shirt designer, and also somehow decided he was the poster maker, and so somehow I never made the poster for the first pay-per-view. It was just him and Sabu. That's kind of how that happened. But
everyone's got a Taz story.
I know, it's the best.
What is it about Taz?
It's just Taz. It's funny. I like Taz. But anyway, so so he came up with which I actually like this idea. The jeans, instead of, because going with the jeans theory, like I do the jean shorts, and Stevie had the cutoffs. I put him in the cutoffs because that's his version. The reason I put him in the short shorts was Daisy Dukes was. His theory is the boss is wearing jean shorts. I'll wear jean shorts, but of course I'm going to show off my body. The boss doesn't, he doesn't know anything about fashion. Of course, he's the idiot. But so he's like, well, we'll put him in overalls because that's kind of the same look, and we'll put him in tie-dyed shirts. I'm like, it works for me. And then so we had Big Dick Dudley from the start, Snot Dudley, and Dudley Dudley. And Dudley was the best worker of the bunch, but he was too expensive because he had to fly him in from Florida. Snot Dudley, we had to fly in, so we had to get rid of them. And then we brought in...
By now, in April of '96, you've got Big Dick, you've got Bubba, you've got Sign Guy, you got Chubby, Dudley, Dances with Dudley. Now there's Devon. Too many Dudleys?
No, well, they're not all there anymore. There's only... Then there was Dances with Dudley, who got let go because New Jack jumped him. That's bullshit. And that's a whole other thing, but I don't want to get into. But then there was Chubby Dudley, who was just there for a cup of coffee. Sign Guy Dudley I came up with for a whole long story. I've told a story 100 times, but basically there was a guy in the front row who was a sign guy. And I I didn't like the fact that he kayfabed Stevie in the gym, because Stevie said hi and he goes kayfabe, like that, because Stevie was a heel and he was a babyface. It's like, you're not even in the business. How dare you? And it infuriated me so much that I decided I was going to make him regret ever being the sign guy and get him to stop being the sign guy. So so I basically I go, Lou, you want to be sign guy Dudley? And he always wanted to be in the business, more than a photographer. So I said, you want to be the sign guy, Dudley? Because he looked like it. He had the long hair, and he already wore the glasses, I think. So I go, we'll come out and we'll put the original sign guy on a sign. And then, so then the next show, the guy comes out with, and how unoriginal is the original sign guy? That's all we put, the original sign guy. So the next guy, the guy comes out with, which was the original sign guy in a slightly bigger sign. So I know that next week, so I come out with the original sign guy in a bigger sign. The next show, I know he's going to try and trump us, so I make a bed sheet.
Right.
With the original sign guy, and he never put another sign up. I ran him out of the business. And he wasn't even in the business. But so Devon, because they go, we need a black guy. You know, it's just we were running through, you know, races and creeds and colors, you know, it's just whatever Dudleys, you know, they all work. And it's ironic that the 8th and 9th Dudleys became the one to become millionaires. I came up with that. I saw Supernova on an indie show, and the fans were all cheering him like a baby face, but nobody understood that he was trying to be like Adam West Batman, like a caricature, you know what I mean? Like he was trying to make a mockery of a superhero, and I thought, this is great. I'll put him with Stevie and the Meanie, you know, and have another idiot in my collection. Right. And so Todd goes, you know, so like, you know, when they first gave me the Meanie, they go, you know, all right, well, listen, we'll try it once. If it works, it'll get over. And they're like, this will never get over. You know, but of course, the Meanie got over like $1 million. So this one, they're like, oh, not another one. All right, well, we'll try it once. If it gets over, thinking it's not going to get over. But of course it did, because it's just ludicrous. Right. You need ludicrous with Raven, because it just makes him more evil, and it makes them more ludicrous. Right. And it also allowed me to do all my comedy stuff that I wanted to do that I couldn't do as Raven. Yeah, there's something about Devin, I think, that just kind of, he walked to his own beat, and it was kind of, I don't know, it just
didn't click.
Yeah, it didn't click. I don't know why. It was like, you know.
But you didn't have a problem with him personally.
I didn't have a problem with him personally. I mean, we never really got along, but we never really had any heat. I think we had some heat after a while. He had some heat with me, you know, I'm sure I offended him at some point, but we've made up since then.
What are some things a wrestler...
Oh, and one of the things that he did was he used to shave in his abs, if I remember correctly. He was the first guy to do that, which is a smart idea, but it just rubs wrestlers the wrong way, even though wrestlers started doing it later. Like, you know, he'd shave the body hair so it looked like a six-pack. Okay. And it's just, you know, that... Also, this may sound stupid, but he was very hippie. So... You know, so that added so he's got big hips, but then he's got hair-drawn abs and...
Oh, hippie meaning his build?
Yeah.
I meant like he was a hippie.
No. Which shouldn't mean anything to anybody, but I mean, but it was like, now he's a bigger guy doing the flying spots, but it looks a little more clumsy, you know, a guy with big hips, you know, and bigger, but his fluidity wasn't quite as much. Okay. So I think it just didn't click with the boys, you know.
Though it may not apply to him, what can one do to immediately get heat with an entire locker room upon coming into a company?
Not shake anybody's hand. Just walk in and just sit down, or walk in and say, hey, fuck off.
So one should walk in, introduce themselves to everybody, or just the person they're working with?
Shake hands to everybody. Walk in, shake hands with everybody.
Okay.
You know, and if somebody, and here's one thing people don't realize, when you walk in and somebody's in a conversation, you should interrupt and say, I just want to say hi, and stick your hand in, shake it, and then get the fuck out of there. Whereas most people would think, well, I don't want to interrupt them, they're in a conversation. Yeah. But then chances are you're not going to have it, you know, they're going to be free at some other time, you're going to be busy. So now it's like you just totally disrespected them. So you're better off just going, hey, just want to say hi, and then, you know, and just, you know, and get, you know. And
then stay off to yourself? Don't interject yourself into conversation?
Well, if you're new to the locker room, you know, I mean, you want to be friendly, but not too friendly. You want to be nice, not too nice. Right. You want to get along, but, you know, you don't want to be like the life of the party. It's you know, it's high school. They refused to kiss. It was just horrible. They agreed to kiss at some point, I'm pretty sure, but then they refused to or whatever, which is just ridiculous. And so they put the big X on the screen, which, you know, is about the best they could do, but...
Do you come up with this? You propose this to them? This is Paulie.
Yeah.
Having fun.
No, he just thought, I mean, you know, I think he was trying to think of a way out of the pregnancy angle. Taz believed his own hype. Taz really was one of those guys. You know, it was like 911. He started to believe his own hype. You know, he always thought he was tough, and I'm not saying he isn't, but he also had a Napoleon complex. You know, I mean, when he got to New York, you know, even though he was new there, you know, in his mind, he's been in business 13 years or whatever, but he's never been anywhere full time. You know, he gets on guys all the time for saying, "Oh, you never paid your dues." Well, he never paid his dues. He never went to a territory, and he could have. I think he went to Smoky Mountain for one day and turned around and quit, you know? So you got to remember. Now, I like Taz. I mean, so this is in the past. I mean, you know, we get along great. But in the past, you know, just calling a spade, you know, he, you know, would get on guys who are not paying their dues, which I think is because he knows he never paid his. And he really started to buy his own press clippings. And in New York, so here he comes in with orange and black. That's his colors. That's his colors. Hey, you can't wear my colors. Well, they're like, fuck you. We're in the #1 company. You know, we've been here 15 years, 10 years, whatever. We'll wear whatever the fuck we want. Who the fuck are you? You know, right. You're an indie guy as far as they were concerned, which is why, like I said, ECW is still #3. You know what I mean?
Do you remember a young Gabe Sapolsky working behind the scenes in the company?
Oh, yeah.
This time?
Yeah.
Did you see anything special in him in a creative capacity?
No, I mean, he listened, you know. I mean, he'll tell you a lot of what he learned. You know, he'll tell you most of what he learned was from Paulie, and a lot of the supplemental was from me. But I never understood why he was considered such a great booker. I mean, because it's like, you know, when we did the kayfabe booking thing, whatever, right? Then we did
guest booker, yeah.
Guest booker, yeah. You know, and I came in. Well, okay, let's not make it about me. But, okay, from what I understand, I didn't watch it, but from what I understand, he basically just put matches together. I think you told me that. He didn't put storylines and build storylines. He just put a lot of matches together.
In his guest booker?
Yeah.
No, I think he did a good job in his guest booker. He did have a lot of logic behind.
But I'm saying, but mostly it was matches, and I think that's a lot of what he did at Ring of Honor was mostly just matches. You know, like he put together matches fans wanted to see. Well, where's that? How's that a great booker? You know, to me, you know, a great booker is somebody who tells stories. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I'm not saying he was a bad booker. I'm just saying I don't see where all the hype was, all the hoopla.
Okay.
But he's a good guy. He's a good kid. Although it all went to his head, like everybody else. You know, like a lot of, not everybody else, but like a lot of people, totally went to his head. You know,
Do you watch his products at all, Dragon Gate or Evolve? No.
I stopped watching wrestling in 2000 because it got so bad.
Right.
And I've heard it's gotten really good again, but I just, you know, I stepped off the horse and I have a hard time getting back on. Oh my God, he's so good. He's one of my all-time favorite people to work with. Him, like if I had to pick my favorite workers, it's always Dreamer and Sandman because the storyline that's just implied forever. I mean, I'm still turning on Dreamer, you know, 20 years later. You know, so we've been feuding for 20 years. Same with me and Sandman. But if I had to have a cold match, Mikey, Just Incredible, or probably my two favorite. Shane Douglas is right up there. But Mikey's just great. He do anything. He can and he will do anything. He's light, so he's easy for me to move around. But if he was heavy, I wouldn't have to do any work either. It's like, I hate having to move guys. Like, it's a work. I mean, I shouldn't have to. If I pick you up, I shouldn't have to pull you up.
I should be getting up. Yeah.
You should make it look like I'm pulling you up, but I shouldn't have to. You know, that's the art form. anybody can make it hard to do that. You know, anybody can throw a real punch. You know, if you want to work strong style, then join MMA. You know, this isn't the art form in this, because we do it every night, is to make it as light as possible. Because we do it every night. That's why they do that. That's why MMA only fights once every 3 months at the most, because it hurts.
Sure.
You know, I mean, it's just, you know, so Mikey, any guy that I can take and I can just guide around like, you know, with a feather, that's, I love working with guys like that.
The direction that NWO would take the company, very much like something you would see in ECW, inspired by the kinds of characters you guys were.
Right.
Did you immediately identify that? Oh, there they go.
Yeah,
that's
I
us
mean,
now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but that's okay though, because if they're doing well, that's good for everybody. You know, until they weren't doing well.
But was it a badge of honor that you are now kind of affecting the entire wrestling industry?
We were affecting it before that even. You know, I mean, when they hired Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and all those guys away, when they started having, you know, more hardcore matches, when they started having more technical matches, when they started having longer matches, when they started, there was so many things we influenced, you know? Yeah, I mean, but it wasn't like all of a sudden this is a game, you know, this is going to affect us in some monster capacity.
Okay.
Other than people kept calling me and say, "Oh, yeah, but you're going to be the third member of the NWO." I'm like, "Yeah, right." I can see him now calling me and offering me $1 million to come in. It's any day now. I'll be hearing that call. I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think so." Divine Brown, for anyone who doesn't know, was a hooker that blew Hugh Grant, the big movie star, when Hugh Grant was the biggest movie star in the country, and he was picked up busted by a cop getting a blowjob from a black hooker on some seedy side road in L.A. And so this is fresh off. I mean, this is like just a month after it happened, so it's quite a coup. And so the angle we do is I'm like, Paulie. I mean, not Paulie, I'm like, sorry. I'm like, Stevie, I go, the women you were bringing me, they're just not sleazy enough. I need a really sleazy chick. I want the sleaziest you can find me. And so he comes out and he goes, how about Divine Brown, boss? I brought Divine Brown. And so it's got topicality.
Absolutely.
It's got ridiculous.
How does it happen?
Paulie called. Paulie, you know, Paulie's got connections. And but the very best part is, she has high heels. She steps in the ring and sinks, like 5-inch heels, and the heels, and she can't move. So Stevie has to pick her up and carry her to me.
What is she like backstage?
Honestly, I think she had an agent with her. Yeah. Yeah, look, celebrity. I think she had an agent with her, and I think she was off to herself.
Right. She'd make any extra money that night, I take it.
I don't think so.
If the agent was there.
Probably was better than that at that point. I grew out of it.
Right. That was her past. That was 5 months ago. It's rumored that he's promised Missy Hyatt.
I think Missy promised to blow him if he did it.
And then in the end told him he was a jabroni. She doesn't do that, whatever.
I thought she dated him. No?
I don't know. What'd she tell us when she was...
Well, one report said that they were living together at the time.
Not at the... No, they weren't living together at the time. Nobody knew Varlands.
No.
Nobody knew Varlands. I mean, he was so... But Paul Varlands, in case anybody doesn't know, was an MMA name at that point. Not a huge name, but a big name. Mm-hmm. Like he wasn't a Don Fry name.
Is this someone Taz would have stood a chance against in a shoot fight?
Probably not. You know, I mean, you can look at it this way. Look, anybody in the business is tough. I mean, wrestlers, we take such a beating every night that you have to put us down, any of us, the smallest, the weakest, the wimpiest, it's still going to, you know, you're going to have to be pretty tough to knock us out. You know what I mean? To take us out. Now, even if we're a terrible fighter. And now if you have guys that can fight, then that's pretty badass. But and I'm not saying, look, I don't say I'm tough. I'm not the toughest guy in any street. You know, I mean, I was relatively tough in my hometown, but once I got into business, I wasn't tough at all. I don't even claim that. You know, so that being said, because I always want to clarify whenever I'm going to say something negative about somebody else that I'm not saying, you know, I'm not saying
giving yourself the rub.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, you know, saying I would do it. But I remember one time Taz pissed RVD off so bad. Did he talk about this? And Taz, what did it go? He goes,
pick one. Right?
Did he slap him first?
No, he asked him to pick a hand.
Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah, well, when you made this, I thought I didn't think he slapped him first. He goes, pick a hand. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, pick a hand, and I'm gonna knock you out with one of them. And Taz wouldn't pick a hand. I would have had to pick a hand. Now, this is all I'm saying. I would have got my ass handed to me. RVD would have crushed me.
But to save face.
But I still would have picked a hand.
Right.
And I probably would have said, hey, listen, look, if you're pissed at me, you know, sorry, whatever I did offended you. I'll pick a hand. Wish we could work this out, but if we can't.
Right.
I picked
or left.
No, give me the right. I'm taking it like a man. But wrestlers as a whole, like in normal people, are tough because we get bounced around nightly, you know what I mean? So people that think that, you know, like a Spike Dudley, you know, isn't that tough. Spike's as tough as they get. You know, it's like, you know, Sabu is super inhuman. I mean, the guy rips his arm so you can see the bone, and he says, Fonzie, go get me some tape in the middle of a match, and tapes it up. I mean, it's just, I've seen him, Sabu just amazes me. I've seen him with a bent arm cast. So the cast goes this, you know, it's a 90-degree angle, and still do the triple jump with a 90-degree cast. I mean, who does that? Oh, one of the best nights of my career. When Gordy had suffered brain damage from an overdose.
Yeah, a few years prior to that.
Was it that long?
93 was the overdose.
Oh, okay. So Gordy wasn't the same wrestler he'd been, and Gordy in his day was when he was 14, he was a better worker than most guys are at 30. You know, he was unbelievable, just natural. I mean, incredibly brilliant worker. You know, I never really met the guy when he was, you know, lucid, but or maybe once I did. You know, I was on a tour of Japan with him, but I didn't hang out with him or anything. But
when you say not lucid, is he uncommunicative?
No, but he's just not very communicative. You know, I mean, you know, his brain doesn't function like it used to, you know. But so I don't know if he was 100% just unbelievably natural or if he was incredibly clever too. He must have been, because he was such a great worker. I mean, and he was so over, and he was so, everything he did was so perfect. I mean, you can't find a better big guy to watch, you know? And, but he was not the same since then. And so, and when they said, I don't know if I think they didn't announce who my opponent was going to be that week. So, and then Kimona, so then while I'm sitting in the ring with Lori between my legs, Sandman's wife, the sound or the power or something goes on with the TV. So what would Raven, so they go, all right, we're not going to have the match for like 10 minutes. They send a ref out to tell me. So they go, you can come back to the locker room. Well, Raven wouldn't do that. Raven would just sit here like, you know, because he doesn't give a shit. Well, he didn't care. So I'm not going to get up. And Raven would never get up and be bothered by that. So I'm like, Raven's not getting up, because you have to know your character. So I just sit there, and Lori just sits there, and we just sit there. And so then Paulie sends Kimona up to dance on the roof of ECW.
When the power goes out. Yeah.
And so she goes up and dances, and she's a stripper, but she won't strip, which is ridiculous. But that's beside the point. And so finally they get it fixed. So now the people have been, built up. They know a title match is coming. They don't know who the opponent is. I'm pretty sure they don't know. I don't know who they're thinking it's going to be because they're not expecting Gordy. And then all of a sudden, the Freebirds music plays, and the way ECW is set up is here's the ring in the center, and then off in the corner is a locker room. So when the locker room door opens, only people that can see who it is are the people right there because the way it's set so far back. So they see Gordy, and and he always comes out with the ring jacket. But I think he had the hood over his head. Yeah. So he comes out, and the people stand up, and the next people, as they're recognized, they stand up, and they stand up, and they stand up. And now I got goosebumps because now I'm really excited because they're playing his music, and they're not expecting him in a place. It's probably the loudest pop in ECW history, other than when either Sandman returned or I returned, after years. So boom, 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 they all start popping up, bah, 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 bah. Place is going apeshit. And me and Stevie, I'd set up a match, and I knew that he wasn't the same. So, but the way I set my matches up, I set them up so that stuff is very choreographed on stuff like this, but it's so organic looking, it doesn't look choreographed, is the difference. Like when people do choreographed matches and it looks like a bunch of choreographed spots, they don't put the breaks and the beats in to make it look like, oh, this is just happening because of that. It's like, on a very simple level, if I slam you in the center and the next spot is getting shot off, well, instead of me having to pick you up, push you into the ropes and shoot you off, you crawl to the ropes and start to stand up, and by the time you're standing, I'm right there to shoot you off. And now it looks organic, but it's much more, but it also plays better. So you take out all the little odds and ends. It's like speech writing. You take out all the extraneous verbiage and you boil it down to its parts. So we put in a bunch of key stuff that was from the Gordy heyday, the Asiatic spike, and all kinds of stuff. And him doing his his fire up thingy, and we set it up in such a way that each thing led to the next thing. So there was nothing but him to follow. You know what I mean? That there's no way he could get off the course. And so we just sent him around the course, and he just followed the course, and boom, and
Were you calling it in the ring?
I'm sure I was reminding him, but I mean, I don't even think we needed to. Okay. But yeah, I always recall stuff as they go. But I mean, I couldn't have done this without Stevie either, though. Stevie was a monster help. I think I ended up with the barbed wire wrapped around my head. Because that's the night we get a Sandman's kid, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I get the barbed wire wrapped around my head. So it's got all these elements to it. It's got Gordy, who you don't expect, and Gordy at his best, or looking at his best, or looking like the old Gordy. You got, him fighting off me and Stevie. You got the Asiatic spike. You got me with barbed wire wrapped around my head, which doesn't happen. So all these cool elements, and then I forget how the match ends, but from there, something happens, Sandman's there or something, and then now he's tracking me down, he's coming after me. So you forget about the pinfall. So we forget about Gordy's loss because it's not, we get the win, but, we're moving forward. So boom, now he's coming after me and stalking me with the kendo stick. And then, and I got Lori in front of me. I got barbed wire wrapped around my head, and out of the crowd runs Tyler, a 7-year-old kid, and he puts his arms out. He goes, "Daddy, you're a drunk. I love Raven," or something to that effect.
I worship Raven.
I worship Raven.
Yeah.
The kid was brilliant.
Who comes up with the idea of having his family join the flock?
Probably Sandman. Paulie might have come up with Peaches, with having her do it. Or maybe they talked about it. Maybe Paulie, maybe Hack wanted it. I think it was Paulie, but I can also see Hack trying to get her a payoff. Well, no, I mean, but to use her, you know what I mean? And I'm sure she wanted to be on TV. I put her in the Kinder Horror outfit. That was my contribution to that. I think the kid was Sandman. Yeah, I think that was pretty much his idea. Good guy.
Yeah.
Good guy. Always he got along with everybody.
This seems silly to ask in an ECW locker room, but the problems that we've come to know that Louis had, were they evident at the time to anybody else, or were
Not to that extent, I don't think.
everybody was kind of dealing with something probably? In the
Well, no,
locker
but
room?
nobody thought they had problems with it at that time. You know,
Right.
I mean, you know, it's still the early stages of the severity of you know, nobody's you know, nobody thinks they're, you know, an alcoholic yet. Nobody thinks they're a drug addict, you know, or you know, nobody's problem has progressed to the point of you know, of damage to themselves, you know, or well, you know, beyond a certain, you know, real damage or to their career. Some of his stuff's really clever. I liked him as a manager. I liked him a lot as a manager. I don't like him as much as a ring announcer because I still think you need a real ring announcer. You know what I mean? I think when you have a ring announcer who's spewing limericks like that, I think it takes away from the credibility of the product. And at the end of the day, it's still pro wrestling. You know, it's still a contest. So I think that takes away from it. But as a manager, I thought he was great. I loved the fact that he was able to, when they'd go to grab his coat, somehow his shoulders were double jointed, and he was able to flop them back. So like mine don't move at all because they're so damaged. But he was able to pull them back like literally behind his back, and the jacket would come off, and somehow he would just run away forward, you know, and then he would cover his tits.
How does he transition from being a straight announcer to the heel announcer and then eventually to manager? Is it something he lobbies for?
Oh, is that how that went? Oh,
Yeah.
oh, so he wasn't yeah, because he wasn't that. No, as an announcer, as a regular announcer, he was good. No, I thought you were talking about when he was. You're right. He wouldn't.
No, when he does the heel announcer thing, and then eventually the manager. But
Right.
how does that progression happen? Is this something he lobbies for, or does Paul see that in him? And
Paul sees it in him. And maybe there's always some lobbying. You know, me and the Pitbulls used to hang out all the time in Philly, and so his neck was bothering him all weekend. So we hung out all weekend, and his neck's killing him, man. I go, I'll take you to my chiropractor on Monday. So I take him to my chiropractor on Monday, and my chiropractor goes, you know, he goes, I never do this, but normally I would just adjust you, but I think you should get an x-ray. Thank God he said
Wow.
that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
he would have paralyzed him. And so Pitbull goes, man, this sucks. So we leave Jersey, go back to Philly, he goes to the hospital, you know, because he doesn't have insurance, typical thing in wrestling. Goes to the hospital where they have to take you, you know, so they have to get seen. And so they x-ray him, and they go, how'd you get in here? He goes, I walked. They go, don't move, don't move. It turned out he broke it on both sides, and he was putting a halo. Oh. And when they put the halo on him, they wouldn't give him any pain meds, and they had to be fully conscious and cognizant, so they knew how tight they were screwing him in his head. Yeah, oh yeah, it's. And then imagine trying to sleep with that thing for 6 months. It's horrifying. And they said the only reason that he isn't paralyzed is because his neck was so muscular.
Muscular that it
'Cause he
kept
walked
everything
around
in place.
Yeah, it held everything
Wow,
in place. He
Jesus.
walked around all weekend.
Francine turns heel in this match. What did you think of her as a heel pairing with Shane Douglas?
What did she turn heel from? I mean, who was she with? She was with nobody, right?
She was with the Pitbulls, right? And then
Oh, she was
she
with the
reveals a
Pitbulls.
franchise thong at the end of the
Oh yeah. yeah.
schmaz there, and
Oh, that's right, because she was with the Pitbulls when Stevie super kicked her,
right,
because after she put fluff on his belly.
right.
That's
She better as a heel, a little closer to her real personality, or
Yeah. Much closer.
Do you
Right
li-
on
do you-
target.
You like her?
We had our day. We had our day. We'd get along when we were together, and then we wouldn't get along when we weren't. So.
Why?
I always thought she was duplicitous. I don't know. No, I guess I got along with her. She's a cool chick. Ultimately, she's a cool chick, but I just find her to be very duplicitous.
Did you ever make up?
What's that?
Did you ever make up? If you saw her today, you'd get a hug and a kiss? Or?
Yeah. But the last time I saw her, though, was she had that charity deal. And I really think that was, I think way too much of that went in her pocket, even though she claims it didn't. But, when you do a charity event, you only have to give 10 or 15% to charity, that's how it is. But, she was claiming that tried to get everybody to work the show for free, and most guys did. I didn't, because I'm like, I'm not buying it, because there's no way she's giving 100% to charity. Nobody gives 100% to charity. If she would have, that would have been great, but, and Funk didn't either, I don't think. And everybody else worked for free, and so a lot of guys drove in. It cost a lot of guys money. And then I know there's no way that she didn't, not only did they make a huge profit because everybody's working for free, but there's no way they gave the whole thing to charity, and I called her out on it,
What was the charity she purported
She
to?
didn't know, there wasn't, no charity would take it. So she had the money so that
she had a charity event without a charity.
Yeah. And so she was going to have to give the charity money to somebody, and then nobody ever saw her again. But, I still think, I'd imagine that if I saw her, she would not, time goes under the, time's past. I wouldn't hold it against her anymore. I was, irate that night, the more I figured it out. But whatever.
Okay, August at the...
She was good in bed.
Lulu... That's a good... at least that's something.
Yes.
How did he get to come in? Is this a connection Paulie had from WCW days?
I think he was not in Japan. And Paul, let's face it, it's not even, in this business, it's a very small business. Everybody knows everybody. And even if you don't know somebody, you know them anyway because they're in the business. It's like if I were to go to a bar and there was, say, I don't know, Dolph Ziggler there, who I've never met, and I'd only recognize because because I don't watch wrestling anymore, but I've seen him. I've done personal appearances where I do at pay-per-view parties. Mm-hmm. So, and I've saw him on a couple of those that I had to do as a guest, and I thought he was very talented. So he stood out in my mind. But if I was in a bar and I saw him, I would assume he'd probably know who I am. I know who he is, mm-hmm. And so I would either just go say hi to him or he'd say hi to me. But it would be like we know each other because even though we don't.
A brotherhood kind of thing.
What's that?
A brotherhood.
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
Of thing.
Yeah.
What's it like to work him?
Yeah, it's awesome because it's a great spot. So before the match, we're going over the match, and I said, hey, Doc, and I like to be the bleeding champion. I always like guys who got bloody. I loved when Flair would always end up bloody. I always thought there should be, certain guys should be a bleeder. There always has to be a bleeder in each, I remember in boxing at the time, or not, years earlier, but Vito Antuofermo was a bleeder in the middleweights when the middleweights were really hot with Marvin Hagler and Alan Minter, and Vito Antuofermo was always a bleeder. And so for an example, and so I like being a bleeder because I thought it was dramatic, and even though you can overdo blood, I still think that certain guys, and you can't have more than really one guy on the card doing it. But certain guy, because that's what happens to him. He ends up getting beat up, mm-hmm. and he ends up bleeding. And I like being that guy, but I didn't want to just bleed on Doc. That's disrespectful. You know what I mean? So I go, Doc, hey, do you mind if I get some color in the match? Because it's even if it wasn't that era where people are starting to worry about AIDS and stuff like that, or hepatitis, I guess. It really, wrestlers never really worried about that. But still, you don't just bleed on a guy who's a much bigger name and without asking, and you don't bleed on anybody without asking, you know what I mean? So I said, hey, listen, you mind if I get some color? And he goes, sure. He goes, hey, I might get some myself. I'm like, oh, great. So we're getting ready to put the match together. And he goes, I better test my blade. Sees a little blood. Oh, it's good. Shit, I can't get it to stop. So they play his music, and he can't get the blood to stop. So he gets it stopped just enough, and he goes, as soon as you get in the ring, hit me. He's a really good guy. Mustafa was talent. I always liked Mustafa. I knew him from Atlanta, and when I lived in Atlanta before that, and New Jack, I may not always saw eye to eye with him on a lot of stuff, in the personal world, but as a talent, it was awesome. He was just so charismatic, and he could talk.
Yeah. Could you work with him in the ring?
Yeah.
That was never the source of any discontent?
No, there wasn't. I think he respected me enough, that there was never going to be a problem, and I respected him enough, so it was cool.
Sometimes folks are critical.
In fact, one time, remember one time we had some words or something. I remember there was some animosity, and so and this is before we had a match. We were having a match that night, and he didn't, he opened up like instead of him coming after me like he does when he's mad about something, which I was expecting, what I mean? I was expecting. Instead he was completely open and basically said, you throw the first shot, what I mean? And I guess he was like, he was ready to work, put it that way, what I mean? That business, he respected me business-wise enough that it wasn't going to be any, that whatever he felt personally wasn't going to affect it, which sometimes he was known to allow it to affect, I loved working with him. He was clever, he was creative. One of my favorite things he did was he set up a double down with me and him, and his foot was hanging off the edge of the ring, and he had Beulah tape a frying pan to his foot, and so then he goes to kick me with the other foot. I catch it, and he enziguris me with the frying pan on his foot. I was like, that's great.
Japanese crowds, how did they take to ECW?
Like an American crowd. I've always thought that was bullshit. The Japanese crowd won't respond to American, you got to work a different style. Bullshit. Psychology works anywhere.
Are they slower to get on the page with a match?
No. It was always the thing that, Japanese fans are quieter. They just clap like this. But I think that's just only because they were conditioned that way. I think when you give them something adrenalized, I think that, if you're telling a story that makes them emotionally invested, they're going to respond in an emotional way. It may be a little more subdued, but I think by then they knew what ECW was, so they didn't come to be subdued.
So they're responding to the style as opposed to just the fact that it was wrestling.
Well, they responded not to the style, but to the way they saw it, to the way they saw the responses, on the TV, on the videos.
Did you go to Ribera Steakhouse?
Yes.
How was it?
It was good. I've been there before, though.
Oh.
I've been to Japan like 6 times for 6 different companies. I can't ever keep a job.
The ECW championship, is it a world title? Did you ever consider it to be a world title? And were you ever offended that the magazines never put it in the world title status?
I wasn't. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I mean, it totally ties in. I think all the guys there considered it to be equal. I think all the guys looking back consider it to be equal. And, I think that's for history to judge. They hated each other.
I was just going to ask you if there was legit heat.
Oh, legit heat. And it was awesome. It was so funny.
She's allegedly upset about Sandman's close on-screen working relationship with Missy, which, judging from what Sandman told us, there may have been some merit to.
Oh, yeah, it totally was.
But she's gone soon after this.
Well,
Missy,
you know,
is
it's
this a
funny.
precipitating factor in her being?
No, Missy was a pain in the ass. And it's a shame because she was actually quite talented. You know, at least she, at least she was for a long, long time. Me and her didn't get along at all at that point. I slept with her way, way, way back when.
Which territory? Let's do it that way.
What's that?
Which territory? Let's do it that way.
When I was Scotty Flamingo, I think, or maybe before that. I think that was then.
Did he make the dick contest when we had her on You Shoot? I don't remember either. We'll have to
But
check that.
well, no,
She ranked them by size. I don't remember if you were in the
who was the winner?
on the board. Who had the top? Oh, we had to get the black one out, right? Score, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I don't remember where you ranked, but go ahead. You slept her way back.
And then for years there was always like an animosity. So she would always be kind of disrespectful to me, but not mean, like kind of meanish, but play it off. And I always wondered why that tension was there. And what it turned out was she actually had liked me. Like I thought she just, would sleep with me, one of the boys, you know what I mean? And so, which I didn't know until years later, I was like, she goes, yeah, that's why I've always been such a bitch to you. I was like, that's why. So I couldn't wait for her to be gone because she was just annoying, and because she was, there was the tension and her, it's like, and she'd always be like, you came fast. I'm like, well, I got myself finished, whatever. But that was basically her critique on me was, I had a big dick, but I came fast. I was like, I'll take it. I accept that.
There have been worse criticisms,
Yeah.
probably to have.
Yeah. And then ironically, years later, because of the pill use, I ended up having like way too much stamina because, you couldn't come because you're in the pills. And you'd have to fake your orgasm sometimes just because you're so exhausted.
to be done.
Just fake it in a condom, because you're wearing a condom. You're like, here, let me throw that away with nothing in it. Just after 30 minutes, you're just like, man, I want to go to bed. I'm hungover.
So that's
it's
a
irony
side
when-
effect of the pills. Okay,
Yeah,
that's good to
the
know.
pain pills make you make it harder to come, and then I guess some of the medications I was on. So it's just ironic that when I was younger I came too fast. Now when I got older it took forever. It's it could have worse problems.
Just the first and last chapter of your book.
Yeah. He's phenomenal. He was a great little worker.
Of all the Dudleys, outside of Devon and Bubba, he probably got over the most. Would you say?
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because of that underdog thing, the size, the.
He was the right guy at the right time, got the right, the Dudleys were only over to an extent. They were never going to be a major thing, except it's because of Bubba. I mean, let's face it, Devon by himself, no offense, wouldn't have got there. No. Bubba's brilliant. Bubba is a smart guy, and he's a talented guy.
Is he a dick?
Yeah, but he owns it. But he's very good at what he does. I mean, look at the transformation he made. Like, who was it? Somebody sent me some pictures of him.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, look. But Bubba was the driving force behind the team. I think it started when he started doing the commentary where he would. Where my name is, but not the commentary. Well, first it was promos, but then he would do the ring announcing, and he go, "My name is and he'd smack him in the head, and then he'd start juggling, and then he'd do the dance, and then he'd also introduce in Spanish, I think, one time.
by the end, we've had Shane Douglas and Francie come out to attack the Pitbulls.
The dog and pony show, I called it.
Absolutely correct. There are I think at one point there's 13 people involved.
Reasonable.
But
here's
basically becomes a trademark of your.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it's done correctly, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is when guys don't set it up right, and it's an art form to set it up because you have to know how much, when, why, how. You know, there's so many. It's like a science experiment, and you have to juggle all the elements just right.
And who's doing that? Who's the architect?
Me. I'm the architect.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the architect of the Matrix.
Does Paulie say to you, Scotty, straighten that all out?
What he does, okay, sometimes he's the architect in the sense that he says, I need this, and this to happen. And so when it's a giant schmoz, he gives me the pieces and I generally put the parts together, you know. Tell me who's in this and what happens.
Well, okay. Well, it's Shane and Francine. Sandman comes out with cane shots. That brings out Brian Lee to counter that. Now there's a gigantic 480-pound rookie named Kareem who arrives and maybe is never seen again. I was going to ask you who that was. You don't even remember, huh? Okay. I think he loses his balance off the top rope. He falls and breaks his leg.
Oh.
During the
Why
schmoz.
can't I remember that?
So anyway, that's...
Yeah, but you know, it's like, okay, the one I was talking before, the double dog collars. Let's see. Paulie goes, we need Fonzie getting choke slammed, and he probably set up the final thing and then let me put the pieces together to build it. But I have to say this, you know, there's always everybody else in the thing has their own input, you know, but I always liked working with guys that would let me outvote them. You know, I'd go like, if this, you know, because like with guys that trusted me enough that I could say, listen, that's okay, but I really think we need to go this way with this, this, and this, you know, because I always believed that my psychology was stronger. And I could be completely out of my mind, you know what I mean? I think I proved my knowledge, but I'm not always right, and I've made mistakes before. Yeah, plenty of them. But but a lot of it was Paulie saying, so yeah, I don't want to take too much credit. I don't want to take credit where it's not due. Paulie he was like, okay, we need to get Fonzie choke slammed. How would that go? He would go, okay. Sometimes I guess, you know, I think the smaller dog and pony shows, like, okay, like when I'd have the Meanie come in and then Nova and then Stevie and then Beulah, that's me, or me and my opponent. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When it's juxtaposed with other people's stuff, that's probably usually Paulie, because only Paulie would know to put the other stuff.
Other angles, I mean, people involved in other angles who are going to meet there. Okay.
That would probably be all Paulie, or for the most part, Paulie.
Okay.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant.
Who directs this, comes up with it, where's it shot? Give me everything.
I don't remember where it's shot. I'm sure that was a Paulie, you know, I mean, I may have had some input in it, you know, but I can't take credit for where I don't know. But it was Paulie's idea, obviously. I think.
You don't remember where it was taped?
No. I mean,
was it a home or
yeah, I'm sure it was somebody's house, yeah. Or maybe it was in a hotel room, I don't know. You know, here's the thing is, you know, I really don't know where, like, you know, Dreamer had ideas, you know, Sandman had ideas, everybody has ideas, you know. So I feel like sometimes I may take credit that I don't ever want to take credit that I don't deserve, you know what I mean? Because I take credit for enough shit, you know what I mean? So I would say that probably sounded like Paulie, you know, but something like, you know, sitting in front of the TV with test pattern sounds like something I would come up with. But It may not be, you know, I don't know. Well,
But
we're
everybody
honest-
had a voice, is what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
So it could have been a stew that a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people contributed to.
Yeah, it's always a stew. It's always a stew, you know, with Paulie, me, and whoever the other ingredients are. It's just who has the main, who throws the meat in. It is always is usually Paulie or me, but occasionally somebody else.
What was the House of Hardcore?
Taz and Saturn School.
Okay, what was it? Was it a school? Were they
Yeah, school,
learning?
school,
They
yeah.
were.
They went to wrestling school there. Yeah,
Okay.
Taz and Saturn had a wrestling school during the week to make extra money.
And they were qualified teachers?
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, I mean,
Well, we've got Larry Sharp, we've got Kowalski, now we've got
everybody's
Saturn and.
you know, I put it this way. There's Okay, depends what you're like for anybody can teach the opening stuff, you know, the bumps, whatever. It's the higher level stuff that requires a different teacher, but most places don't have that. You know, I mean, Taz and Saturn were talented. You know, they're both very talented. You know, so yeah, they were more than qualified to teach.
Okay.
You know, but my only problem with wrestling school teachers is when you get guys who were students of students of students who have never been anywhere and they're teaching people and they don't even know what they're doing, you know. But somebody who's been around the block, yeah, they have more than enough knowledge. You know, the only thing is some people don't know how to teach. You know, some people could be fantastic workers but can't teach, and some people could be crappy workers but great teachers. That's much more rare, though.
Okay.
But yeah, they were more than qualified.
Now, Chris Chetty being Taz's cousin, does that get him any heat?
Yeah.
In the locker
No,
room?
it gets him moved up right into the card. But no, because Chetty was such a cool kid. So yeah, he was just I don't think he had any heat. I thought we came out looking like jabronis. Taz got jobbed out to the commentator. He was supposed to be the toughest guy, and he got beat up by the commentator, by Lawler. I thought it was horrible for us.
Is Paul still kayfabing that, you know, that there's any working relationship between, you know,
I
Vince
would
and-
imagine he probably was, but I don't remember. But here's the other thing is that I don't know what he was thinking with that, because I guess he was thinking like national exposure. But you know, when you take one of your top guys and who's already 5'7", and then you have him smaller than the commentator, you know, and getting beat up by the commentator, you know, who's not Jerry Lawler of Memphis. That'd be different if it was Jerry Lawler of Memphis. This is Jerry Lawler on national TV, which is a comedy character.
When you guys are when it's first proposed that you guys do the ringside thing, where I guess it's Sandman.
Those guys were
and
scared. Those guys were
Dream.
so scared it was going to turn into a shoot. I was like, nah, they're not going to fight. It's not going to turn into a shoot. They were like, but they were like all worried that it was going to, you know, they're like, all right, everybody tape up your fist, blah, blah. I'm like, nothing's going to happen. Fucking marks.
Were you disappointed at all when you found out that Paul was working with Vince all along?
Not really. Why would I be?
No, just that you were duped. That Paulie couldn't even just say to you guys, listen, we're going to do a thing.
But
I
why-
talked to Vince and we're going to...
Why would he? I mean, he'd already been on their payroll for a long time. He's keeping the company afloat.
Do you know anything about the deal they had in hindsight? Like,
Yeah, I think he was getting paid X amount of dollars a week, you know.
to what?
To be like
To use ECW as a training ground? Or
feeder system, probably.
feeder system, right?
I was in rehab, right?
Right.
Right.
There were others. Well, he got on, he said personal problem. Is that what the personal problem was? You were in rehab? How long were you supposed to be away for?
Whatever it took, but it really only took a weekend. Basically, I basically had an emotional breakdown. I took all the structure out of my life because basically at that point I didn't need to work out anymore because of the size of the company. Other than wrestling, I didn't have anything to do. I had nothing to do, nowhere to be. And when you take all the structure out of your life, like human beings need structure. And when I took it all out, any responsibility, my whole and I just couldn't get out of bed. But after a couple days in rehab, I realized that, and then I was like, all right, let me out. And they go, well, if your insurance is going to pay for it, you got to stay longer. So I ended up having to stay like 10 days. But then I was fine.
Was there a chemical withdrawal process that you were going through?
No. I mean, I wasn't, my addiction wasn't that bad yet.
You checked yourself into rehab?
Yeah. I had Sandman drive me. Yeah, because I couldn't even get out of bed.
Were you attributing it to
I didn't know what it was. I didn't
or-
know. I'd never had depression, never had anything. So I didn't know what it was. I was just like, man, this is, I can't get out of bed. I just can't, emotionally get myself out of bed. It was weird.
Should Paulie have taken the title off you?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really.
What would you have done?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to, I guess. Well, it all depends how long it was going to last. You know what I mean? Like, I also don't know where the storyline was, because for storyline purposes, it may have made sense. Maybe I was going to lose it anyway. Yeah, the best thing I heard, though, was Pitbull #2 kept trying to go, the only reason Raven went to rehab was he didn't want to lose the belt. WWF offered him $1 million fresh off of his Olympics, but Kurt didn't want to get into pro wrestling. He never watched it, thought it was ridiculous, and had no interest in it whatsoever. And then he was going to go into commentating on other sports or marketing, or be a personal speaker and blah blah blah, public speaking, and none of that worked out. So then he was feeling his options. He's like, So he thought about coming to ECW until he saw me crucify the Sandman. And then he's like, never mind. And then he went to WWE.
I'm going to get to that. So there was a plan for him to be around longer.
Well, there was the
one of my
hope. It was the
questions,
hope.
yeah.
They were trying to sell him on being a part of the show.
They are polarizing figures. How did you do with
Not
them?
Candido.
behind the
Candido
scenes?
got along with everybody.
Right, but they were a package deal.
Yeah, but everybody, the way I thought it was that everybody separated the two. I've never seen anybody that had a bad word for Candido.
Right. Okay.
No matter what they thought of Tammy.
Right. What'd you think of Tammy?
I think she was very. It's a sad story, It's like she was the first chick to break out big in a long time. I mean, she broke out big, and then it all went to her head, and then she crashed and burned hard, and it's sad,
At this time, though, 96, did you have problems with Tammy? Wasn't a sad story at this time.
I never had a problem with Tammy. Was she still in she was still in New York, wasn't she?
96? Oh, they kept her? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's why she wasn't back.
Yeah, I think she flew me somewhere to meet her one time. When she was during this time frame.
Needed to talk?
Yeah.
Was that ever weird? I mean, everyone loved Chris. Chris was always around, and how did Chris not know? I asked her this on camera.
You know what? What you asked her that?
I said, how did Chris? Everyone knew. How did Chris not know? She said, I never asked, so I don't know.
All I can think is that he either didn't care, or he got off on it. The first time I was with her, she, or maybe, I think it was the first time. It was exactly like somebody else had described it to me. I was, they brought me back to, we went to see the Kiss concert, and we got lost driving back somehow, even though they'd been to the Nassau Coliseum a million times. And then she's like, well, it's too late, you need to stay over. So she made me a room, I stay over. Chris goes to, let's see, how does it go?
So Chris is
Chris
there.
takes a shower, she comes out, blows me or whatever. Then she goes to bed, and they go to bed, and then she comes in the room later. But it was exactly, however it was exactly like somebody else had said that they went through the same thing.
And at no point are you thinking,
Well, at
"Fucking
one
Chris
point
is-"
when she was in my room, I could have sworn I saw somebody out the window, and I'm like, if that was Chris, that would make sense. But
Okay.
I think it was just my imagination. But, but I don't know. I mean, she slept with Hack Myers while Chris was passed out in the same bed. I mean.
Did you come too soon in
No.
that instant? No.
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 No, it was just it was an occasional problem. Probably maybe once every occasion. No.
Well, where did,
I don't know. I don't
where
remember.
did Tammy rank in those talents? I mean, you said Francine was very good.
Yeah, no. So, look, I mean, they all are because they're all good workers. They know how to sell.
Best answer ever recorded.
Yeah, one time. Yeah, actually, never mind.
You can't do that. I'm not in your head. You can't. You
Yeah,
don't have to
no,
start it, but you can't stop it.
No, I know. That's why I didn't start it. No, it's just the. She was really hot. She was really hot at one point. I mean, she was stunning. Missy was really hot. I'd like to. I guess I'm just happy I was with them all when they were at their peaks.
In that era, yeah.
Yes, in their peaks.
It's all approved ahead of time, right? By everyone. All the participants are down with this.
Yeah.
Why does it strike such a chord?
It didn't. It didn't. The audience loved it. Here's the thing. It was the perfect reaction. It was the exact reaction I was looking for. Stunned shock, But the reaction of Kurt Angle in the back was livid because he's a Christian. What the fuck is this farce you're trying to draw me into? They crucify somebody? To him it was just, wow. And so Paulie has to play damage control, so he has to pretend like he's upset about it. Taz is furious about it, because Taz jumped on the bandwagon, because he wanted Kurt in, so he could beat him, So
You go back out and you apologize.
which is the stupidest thing ever, because if you're the Extreme promotion, you never apologize. It doesn't matter if you go over the line, you just know that you don't cross it again. But I didn't go over the line.
You're told to go back out by
Yeah,
Paulie,
I'm told.
obviously.
I fought that vigorously. But then I went out and made the most insincere, and they go, make it sincere. So I made it really insincerely sincere. But the thing is, it had nothing to do with religion. Look, Raven's character was always, he was crucified for society's sins. He was a martyr for society's sins, So, and he felt society's pain. So he wanted to make Sandman feel like the way he felt. That's all it was. It wasn't like when Madonna wears a cross and she shoves up her hoo-ha. It's not about religion. Maybe it's slightly, but but it's used. How many paintings and how much architecture and not architecture, but how many paintings and pieces of art use religious iconography as a symbolic point about something else? That's all I was doing.
Was it yours? Was it your idea?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I knew I needed to come back with an impact, because I was gone for 3 weeks from the rehab thing. And I wanted to make an impact, so I said, yeah, let's string up the Sandman, let's crucify him. So I made him build his own cross because I couldn't have built one.
What's he like behind the scenes, Big Dick?
Quiet, very quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've had ever said more than hi, how are you to him. You know,
There's a history of his getting in trouble. Is he a badass? Just
from what I understand, he's a real badass. But I don't think he's like a mean bad. I never got the sense that he was a badass. You know, unless you stepped on him. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I never got the sense that he would just, you know, that he was, you know, gonna just pick on people or like that. I never got that sense. I mean, I don't know. I don't know him really at all.
Right.
But I never got the sense that he was the kind of guy that would pick on people.
he's not a troublemaker. He's just a tough guy, maybe.
Well, I'm not saying he wasn't a trouble. Like, I think, you know, he had a knack for trouble. But I'm saying, but there's a difference between somebody who picks on people and somebody who just gets in trouble. There's a big difference. I may not have liked it. I don't think it was my idea, and I don't think I liked it because I never liked the idea. Oh, no, this may have been.
Well, they're doing a series of parodies.
Well, yeah, well, the parodies were my idea.
This is
but
the
they
one
weren't
that
parodies.
sticks.
But they were homages. They were actually homages to tag teams I liked.
Right.
They weren't really parodies, but they were just funny.
Right.
But this, I think, okay. There's one of two thoughts. Either I liked it, or I didn't. But I'll tell you why I didn't, and that's because if Stevie was going to break out by copying another gimmick, you're only going to get so far. So I either was all for it or I was all against it. But I don't know which.
Of all the homages that they did, which was your favorite?
Oh, Baron von Stevie, Colonel Domini and Baron von Stevie. Because first of all, when that was at the Lulu Temple, and so Stevie, like, you know, I'm his boss, you know, and as a work and a shoot, you know what I mean? Like, you know, he's a young guy, you know, I've been around the business, you know, for whatever. And there's such a respect in the business. And when I told him what we're doing, he started to argue with me. And I told him, you never argue with me in public. If you have a problem, you pull me aside and I'll discuss anything with you in private, but you never argue with me in public. And he was arguing and it was getting heated. And I'm like, dude, you better back the fuck down. You're doing the fucking gimmick and shut the fuck up. He didn't want to wear the bald skin cap. Right? And the best part is it turned out to be the best one we ever did by a long margin if you ask anybody who was there that night. And so finally I convinced him to do it, and it was very heated. And so me and Brian Lee was with us. We're down at ringside, and at the Lulu Temple, the boys there's a curtain on the stage. And the boys are looking under the curtain to watch the matches because they're like right at eye height for the ring.
Right.
And so basically they're looking, like if you're looking, I'm basically facing the ring, you know, leaning on the apron, and my eyesight is like basically their eyesight so they can see me. Or no, when I'm sitting in the corner, I'm sorry, when I'm sitting in the corner, their like eyesight is where my eyes are. Mm-hmm. And so Stevie was watching around like Baron von Raschke, and he's going, and those bald skin caps coming off, and he's going, I will not hurt you, meanie. And I forget what else he was saying. And I'm trying so hard not to laugh. It was the only time I broke character. And Brian Lee's in the corner going, and that's where Brian Lee was leaning on the apron going, that's a funny shit. Why ain't you laughing? That's a funny shit. And I'm going, and so so I bend my head down to hide my face, and my shoulders start dry heaving. That's where that came from. And my shoulders are on, then I'd look up, and it was like the only night I broke character. It was so fucking funny. And it was the best though was because I love when somebody just says it'll never work and it gets over like, you know, even better. And so I love it. Then you had to make them eat crow. It's so good. It's funny, like, the one thing people said about my work was whenever I wrestle Funk, like, everything was way too light, you know? And I'm like, not that I would ever hurt him. Like, you couldn't hurt him. He was so tough. But out of respect, like my chair shots were lighter, everything. They're like, you got to hit him harder, you know.
What was it about ECW that kept him coming back, do you think? It's Terry Funk.
It was because it was so well done. Just so well done.
What did you think of him performing moonsaults at his age? Did anyone ever question his
Unbelievable.
sanity?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What an amazing guy.
Is it as big a deal as it would become?
I honestly, I just paid no attention. I had no idea. You know, it's like, I think at that locker room, you can't see the stage very well, or you can't see it at all, or so, you know, so you're kind of, you know, not really aware of what's going on. So I think it was compartmentalized.
New Jack comes back screaming, I hope he does fucking die. That's according to RVD. So is he making a big commotion?
I don't remember. I was probably, whatever, who gives a shit?
So that night, there was no impact on you?
Not on me, because I was like, whatever.
Subsequently, when you see it, what's your reaction?
Yeah, I've bled that much before, so whatever. I mean, I can get what a kid was scared, you know what I mean? And I think the whole thing was absurdly done, you know, and I think, you know, why it was done is even more absurd. But, you know, what are you going to, I mean, I try to stay out of New Jack stuff, you know what I mean?
What's the key to working barbed wire safely?
There isn't. I mean, just don't get it in your eyes. Don't get hit in the eyes. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, barbed wire is barbed wire, you know? I mean, it's got little sticky things, little pricky things in the end that are going to stab you. You know, I told Sandman, I go, listen, I want you to whip me when you break it apart, the ring, and you get a nice long piece, I want you to whip me across the back with it. If I start to move away from you and selling it, then don't hit me again. But if I stay there, hit me a couple more times. So he whips me with it once, looks down, yeah, he's not moving. Oh, I guess it doesn't bother him. Whoop, whoop. And he gave me a bunch of shots. I was really dreading that match, but I knew it was important for me to, you know, to do, for my own sense of accomplishment and for my own sense of overcoming that fear. But I enjoyed it. I really did. I wish I would have done another one.
You sometimes hear Sandman called irresponsible, coming to the ring in conditions where he shouldn't be. Did you experience any of that in your time feuding with him?
Oh my God, Sandman was always a menace to society, but he was always functional. You know, I mean, and I think it also depended who he worked with, you know, and what he was doing. I mean, the stuff we did was, you know, was I'd say important to the show, you know. So he was always, you know, functional. He's a bright guy, you know.
You were never hurt?
No,
Okay.
he never hurt me. But then again, he always. But that's one thing is I preferred to beat him up, and he preferred to let me. So you know, it worked out well. Although one time, this is one of my favorite stories, is earlier in a house show, somebody had given somebody a watermelon, and broke it over somebody's head or something. There's watermelon juice all over the ring. So I'm in the ring, and Sandman comes running out to attack me, and hits the watermelon juice, goes sliding, does like a half split, you know, where your one leg's back, one leg's forward. Does a half split and slides right into the ring post and knocks himself out cold. So I had to go out to the floor, pick him up, roll him into the ring. Then I grabbed his wrist, punched myself in the face, hooked myself, and DDT'd myself, and so he could leave me laying.
Looking back at this year, how would you describe it's a 7-year history. So where do you place '96 in the lineage?
One of the best years ever.
Yeah.
I would put it at the top of my career. One of my best years, one of my favorite years. One of my saddest years because of my problems with booze and drugs got worse. That's when I truly became an alcoholic and a drug addict. But yeah, I always say my best years in wrestling were the 2 in Portland, the 2 in ECW, and the first one in WCW. Those were my best years.
What's a final word on Paul Heyman?
Genius, just brilliant, mad scientist. Mad scientist. If you give him all the concoctions to work with, he will build you the most impressive array of mad scientist memorabilia you'll ever have.